Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar, Age of Virtual Care. Before we begin, I would like to thank Abbott, Lilly, Medtronic, Novo Nordisk, and Ypsomed for sponsoring tonight's webinar. My name is Elaine Wilson. I'm a pediatric diabetes educator working at Trillium Pediatric Diabetes Center. It's been my pleasure to journey with youth and their families in the diabetes world for over 20 years. I've met some very wonderful and inspiring young people who've taught me powerful lessons about perseverance and resilience. I came to Canada in the 80s, and when I arrived, I felt like I had discovered the land of opportunity, and I was right. I was lucky to be given the chance to work in the pediatric diabetes clinic at Trillium. The families and the youth that I work with feel like my extended family. So often in clinic, we share the successes and the struggles of diabetes management. I'm excited to see technology start to lighten some of the burden of diabetes. And I hope that in the very near future, technology will be available to everyone with diabetes that will allow algorithms to take care of the minute-to-minute adjustments that blood glucose management needs. And now I would like to let my co-moderator this evening, Alana Landry, introduce herself. Alana.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's exciting topic of technology. My name is Alana Landry. I'm a pediatric diabetes educator and have had the privilege of doing this for 25 years. As a pediatric nurse, I thought that just doing pediatrics was an incredible professional gift. Once I started working in the diabetes field, though, having lifelong relationships with our patients and families and adapting to all of the new technology and advances in diabetes management, I found that the true passion of my job came alive. The relationships and the amazing journey I get to take with my families is one of the most rewarding things I get to experience. So I'm excited to be on this chat tonight and to co-moderate with an esteemed colleague, Elaine, and get to the bottom of some of the nitty-gritty on devices, technology, the pros and cons, and see where the discussions lead us.
So diabetes technology can change lives, and it usually improves diabetes care. However, it might not be for everyone. It's important for you to know what works for you. You have to be emotionally ready to use diabetes technology. There's so many questions to consider. Do you know what questions you want to ask your healthcare team? Are you considering an insulin pump or a sensor? Do you want to know what other people think of diabetes technology? Do you want to know what they love and what drives them crazy?
Advancements in diabetes technology have helped manage diabetes. Sometimes, though, we overlook all the aspects that could interfere with using this technology, such as mental health, safety, being in public, insertion sites, other people's reactions, potential information overload, and intimacy. This means that we have to prepare ahead of time for the possible hurdles.
Communicating our fears, desires, and expectations to our loved ones and healthcare team is incredibly valuable. This will help them understand our viewpoint and support our choices. Diabetes is a 24/7 job, and those living with it are the ones making the decisions. Everyone has a different strategy for approaching the respective issues. One may face one issue that someone else may never deal with. It's important to respect our body and our feelings.
Tonight, we will discuss how our panelists have been dealing with technology throughout their lives and how it's impacted their diabetes management. All of the panelists here today have received Diabetes Hope scholarships previously. Our alumni come from different backgrounds. They will be able to share their different opinions on the matter of technology. Since we are all experiencing the same journey and we are all here to help each other, remember, this is not school, and our goal is to make this a fun conversation with you and our alumni. Ultimately, the goal of tonight's webinar is to connect and learn from each other and to have some fun. So ask any questions that you have. Please share your comments, and we look forward to having you join us in tonight's webinar. Let's meet our lovely panelists for this evening. First, Kristen, Heather, there she is, Heather, or actually maybe Kristen, you could introduce yourself.
Okay, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Kristen. I'm a 2009 scholarship recipient. Since I received my scholarship in 2009, I've been volunteering with DHF at various events and through many of their programs. I'm currently in Vaughan, and I work for the York Region District School Board. I'm currently, because of COVID, working online in their virtual school, supporting a class of kids with special needs. And I'm excited to be here tonight talking about my experience with diabetes and tech, because as somebody who lives with a unique form of type 1 and also deals with hypoglycemia and awareness, tech is very important in my life. And, you know, I wouldn't be able to do what I do and be where I am without, you know, the support of my family, friends, and my clinic at Women's College.
Thank you, Kristen. Heather, could you introduce yourself?
For sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather. I was a 2011 scholarship recipient. I currently work at Statistics Canada, and a lot of my work involves contact tracing for and staffing for the pandemic, so very much aware of our current situation. I have volunteered mostly as a mentor with DHF, just trying to help children, or not children, rather new adults transition to life as a solo diabetes champion. And I love it. Every second, every journey is unique. And I think it's great to have different resources in the community that way.
Thanks, Heather. Rav, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Jolt, but I go by Rav, like ravishing. I've had diabetes since I was 2 years old, and I received my DHF scholarship in 2013. Growing up, I didn't really know anyone with diabetes in my very big family or in my friend circle. So when I got my scholarship, it was really nice to just meet a group of people who are willing to accept me and also understood why my pump was going off like every 2 minutes. So I've really enjoyed being a part of this community. In terms of tech I've used, I was first on the pump when I was 15, then I took a little bit of a break when I was 19, and then went back on the pump when I was 21, which I'll talk more about later. Right now, I am actually the virtual program director with Diabetes Hope Foundation. So I look after the Peer Mentorship program, the Hope Connects program, and the webinars that you have been watching over the last few weeks. And it's been something I've really enjoyed doing because I get to connect with all these lovely people who are passionate about type 1 advocacy. And I'm really looking forward to hearing you guys' questions and our chat tonight.
Great, thank you so much. And Luke, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. First, I'd like to start off by saying thank you to everyone who's joined, and thanks to DHF for running these webinars. They've been great. So my name's Luke. I'm currently a student studying medicine in my 3rd year. My dream job, just to give a bit of background, is to become a pediatric endocrinologist and actually help that transition and youth living with diabetes. So DHF has been something very close to my heart and has definitely given me a bright outlook with diabetes management. I received my scholarship in 2014, if I can remember correctly. Yes, should it be? And I studied biochemistry for my undergraduate. And I guess we'll get to know me a little bit more with the questions. So I'll let you guys take it away. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Luke.
All right, so let's get started. Tech is not a quick fix, and it's important to remember that any improvement is unlikely to happen immediately. Think of someone who's been using insulin injections and finger pokes for testing for a long period of time. The routine's going to change, and it's going to take time for them to adapt to a new routine. Technology is only a tool to help you manage your diabetes. It's up to you to use the technology to help you reach your personal blood glucose targets. So my first question, how has technology helped you manage your diabetes? Has it been a challenge during COVID? For example, the virtual appointments versus the in-person? Maybe Kirsten, we can start with you.
Sure. So I am on the Omnipod and I am on the Freestyle Libre. Tech has helped me in a lot of ways. I'm able to quickly connect faster with my clinic online through email. My team has a look at my Omnipod results through Dyson and my Libre results through LibreView. So they're able to, look at that and provide me with whatever, necessary changes or adjustments that I need. In terms of, COVID, I would say it's been easier. When I was in school, I would have to take the time off, take a sick day to go to my appointments because they're downtown Toronto and I'm in York Region. But with this now, I'm able to, take my appointment on my lunch or when the day is done at the end of the day and be able to meet with my team via phone call. The only difference is that I have to do 2 appointments or 3 appointments over a span of a couple weeks versus on one day. But yeah, it's been going really great.
Perfect. That's interesting that you would see all your caregivers in the one day, but now you have to separate it out. Is that what you mean?
Yes. So for example, I do see a pump nurse at Women's College, and I would normally see her before I would see my endocrinologist, but now I see her like a week before, so she had more time to look at my results. And then I can, have the week to adjust. And then when I see my endo, she can say, oh, you've had adjustments made. How are those going? Do I need to change anything? Do you need to talk to her again? And so, yeah, it's been going really great.
Nice. Heather, would you like to take a stab at this?
For sure, yeah. I'm also at Women's College Hospital, and I just learned now that there's such a thing as a pump nurse. So that is super cool and maybe something I will consider. I think technology has been super useful, Women's College, and I feel like medical caregivers have great interfaces and platforms where you're able to connect and get the information you need faster and easier, which I am all about. I do a lot of my own tweaking based on the results I get. I'm currently on an insulin pump Medtronic, I think 570, or I want to say that's what the model is. And I just switched over from Libre to Dex, the new Dex 6, because there are no more finger pricks and no more calibrating. And I love it. I love all of the information I can get through the app, and then the Clarity app that gives you a bunch of summary reports. The information is super easy to digest and send to anyone who needs to see it. And I can share that with a bunch of people. One of my mentees actually shared the term bio-stalking, which is what his parents do to him sometimes. And I think like my mom now has the opportunity to do that if she really wants to see how I'm doing or if I'm managing my diabetes great. So I think it's just such an easy way to share information so that you, your caregivers, your loved ones all know that you're doing well with your diabetes. And if they ever need to check in, they don't need to constantly ask you like, have you tested your blood sugar? When's the last time you gave yourself insulin? So I think it's a big bonus.
Actually, it's funny. I was just about to ask you, do you feel it makes you talk about your diabetes less, or do you think it makes you talk about it more because it's there all the time?
I think if I want to say I talk about it less now, because if my parents ever have questions, they can just check out the app. But my diabetes conversations, like diabetes is such a big part of my life. I'm all about advocacy. I love the people I mentor. They're great. And my entire community, because I had the privilege of going to Camp Huron, I have tons of friends who are diabetic. So it's just my whole life is colored in ways with diabetes. But I think there are weirder conversations. Like I will talk about the number of times I caught my pump tubing on doorknobs, or like just being pulled back and watching weird people's reaction as they're like, what's happening to that weird lady? So yeah.
Thank you so much. That's perfect. Rav, have you something to say?
Yeah, so tech for me, it's incredibly convenient. And I feel like I can actually manage my diabetes in real time. I don't know if that makes sense. Like if I'm on the train or if I'm like at a family function, I can just be there in the moment, converse with someone and bolus. On the flip side, even if you give yourself an injection, it's a great excuse to leave an awkward conversation. It's like, oh, I got to give myself some insulin. You know, it's a good way to get out of that. And for me, what I love about tech is that it is a good conversation starter. Kind of going off of Heather's point in terms of educating other people and being an advocate for T1D. I interact with a lot of people who just don't get it, and they might not be the most kind or accepting of diabetes. So when they actually see a pump and the tube attached to me, they're like, oh, this is something I was not aware of. And they, you know, I can educate someone and like have my own back. In terms of like virtual appointments, I only had one, and this was right at the start of lockdown in March. It was a little bit chaotic for me. It's a privilege to have fast internet. And my doctor and I just kept cutting out. So it was a really, really short appointment. It did feel kind of like less personable, but I am really fortunate that now I can have these COVID style appointments, which are like 10 minutes. I can still go into my clinic, have that like person to person connection, which is something I really thrive off of and I do need. And I just take advantage of those days. Like I'll hit up the pharmacy that day, add my family doctor to the mix. Why not get some groceries? So that's my going out day now.
Perfect. It sounds like you do have to be pretty organized. I think diabetes makes you be organized, right? It's just like, because there's a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, because I always say, like, you know, if you have like a messy room, you have a messy mind, but that kind of also applies to your diabetes. Like if things aren't organized, or if you feel yourself not having a full grasp on it, it can feel real chaotic real quick.
Right. Look.
Yeah, so I actually came into the diabetes realm, I should say, a little bit later. I was almost 17 when I was diagnosed. So I started initially on a long time with the injections and had a bit of a weird start into the pump realm. And now I'm on the brand new Medtronic 670G. And it's been a journey for me, learning, a very steep learning curve, but I think in total it's been very rewarding. There's obviously many challenges compared to just being on the injections. Of course, if you're used to it for a long time, there's a bunch of new stuff to learn. There's a ton of data that comes with it. But in terms of COVID and managing diabetes with my clinic, actually it's been quite well, I'd say. With the appointments, everything is uploaded online, and it's been really easy for them to kind of streamline a quick Zoom call or teleappointment for me, and it's been working great. We go over all of it with the nurses, and they've been phenomenal. So for me, it's definitely taken a lot of the thinking out of my day, although a lot of the pump site and sensor changes do also take a little bit of time. So all in all, it's been a very good learning curve. And if anyone has any questions about the 670G, kind of my experience with it, I'd love to share.
Can I ask, are you wearing a sensor with the pump?
Yeah, it's not. So I think, Kristen, you mentioned you're on the Libre sensor. It's not quite the same. And I think there's the Dexcom CGM as well. I am on the Medtronic one. So they have their own sensor. I think the Guardian, I don't know the model number specifically, but the Guardian sensor with Medtronic. And so I change it every week and then change my cannula sites every 3 days.
Perfect.
It's something to get used to, but it gives me a reading every 5 minutes, and I need to calibrate it every 12 hours.
Perfect. Perfect. Is there a big difference between the care in the UK versus Canada, just out of curiosity?
All right. So for those who might not know, I'm currently living in the United Kingdom. I actually got all of my diabetes supplies and brought it here with me. So I have a large supply of my insulin. I came here with a ton of pump supplies, but I can order from Medtronic in the UK as well. I realized after, so I didn't need to lug it all over with me, but I feel it's always better safe than sorry. Doesn't hurt to have it on you. So
You were taught well. That's perfect. All right.
Okay, so circling back to the CGMs that all of you are wearing. CGMs give you clear insight as to how your day-to-day life is going, how stress is affecting your blood sugars, but sometimes receiving this amount of data can feel overwhelming, especially if the data isn't specifically going in the direction you would like it to be. Before someone starts using a CGM, you want them to think about how it will feel having access to all of that information and so much data that you didn't have beforehand, and having time to talk to your healthcare team about how to interpret that information. So I'd like to ask each of you how you manage that amount of data that you are getting daily, and how you work through not being overwhelmed with that information. And I'll start with you, Kristen.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, if anybody's watching, I was on the mental health webinar, and I did mention the fact about how I have reactive anxiety disorder. So first things first is I have to control my anxiety disorder, because if my anxiety disorder goes off, I get overwhelmed, and then it's hard to, everything else spirals out of control, and then I'm not able to control things. So once that's sort of settled, then I sort of say to myself, one day at a time, today might be, I'm experiencing something, could be, I'm tired, or I'm not feeling well, or something's gone on. And then, and tell myself it's okay. Just look at the data, see how things go. And then if I need to be concerned about it, I'll get concerned about it, try to work through it on my own. And then if it's something I can't work through on my own, then keep in mind that my clinic is always available. And like I said, I have a pump nurse who I can just email and just say, hey, do you mind looking at my Diacin results? Do you mind looking at my LibreView results? And just telling me how I can help myself. And sure enough, they'll get back to me right away and let me know what change I need to make.
So it sounds like you've been able to adapt to that large amount of information and found a way to manage not getting overwhelmed and kind of settling down. Do you have your alarms set in a wide setting to help you not get overwhelmed with that aspect too?
Well, seeing as how I do have what I mentioned earlier in my intro, something known as hypoglycemia and awareness, which is I'm not always able to read my symptoms, because when I was 3 years old, I had 95% of my pancreas removed due to hypoglycemia and going into seizures. And one of the side effects of that was the inability to read my symptoms from time to time. So what I've had to do is, the moment I feel something, check. Or, sort of, I've set myself on a regimen, and my family and, the help that I've had since I was a kid is to check every 2 hours. Even when I was working in the school, because I didn't have the opportunity to check every now and again, because first with my students, I would wear a satchel over my back with everything in it in an emergency case. So if I needed to pull it out and wasn't able to take the time away, I could just pull up my sensor, scan it, and, deal with it then while I was working at the same time.
That's amazing. And Heather?
For me, I'm a big control freak. So the way Kirsten mentioned, like, her anxiety is triggered by all of the information, I feel like I'm the opposite. If I don't know what's happening, it makes me anxious, and I just need to know immediately. And so I actually love having all of the information. Like you had mentioned, I did set special alarms so that my CGM only harasses me if I am like dangerously low or past like a certain level of high where I'm already feeling like garbage, and I probably have done things to fix it. I will say that adjusting to a CGM from any kind of other system did take a little while for me because I love having all of the information. I was finding that I was stacking corrections a lot, which meant that as I was creeping up and my CGM was trying to catch up, I was constantly just microdosing myself with small amounts of insulin, and then that would all culminate in me crashing and burning very hard and just like a puddle of low, just eating everything in sight. So I will say that it's definitely a learning experience, trying and succeeding with new technology. But I think for me personally, I have really loved all of the information, the reports that they can generate, and then even guesstimating your A1C or your time in range. I think it's great information to have.
Absolutely. It sounds like the keys for you were figuring out what alarms you needed set and not to get alarm fatigue, and so that you had what you needed for control but didn't get burnt out, which is amazing. And Rav?
So I actually don't wear a CGM. I have always been like a finger poke gal. It's just something I grew up with and I'm very comfortable with. But I will be getting a CGM, I think next year. And yeah, I am kind of scared, but you know what? But you know, it's nice to hear Heather admit it is a learning curve. So sometimes having that level of honesty and realness between like type 1s is needed. So I can kind of anticipate that, you know, feeling overwhelmed is okay. And even when I see like my pump numbers, and I see like how everything's color coded, it's easy if things are trending not so greatly to, you know, be hard on myself. But then I have to kind of remind myself that these trends, these patterns, however you want to color code it, it's there to help you at the end of the day and identify patterns and trends which, you know, you might not want to acknowledge or admit to yourself, right? Like I know for me, late at night, I'm a stress eater. And as much as I don't want to admit it to myself, when I see my numbers, the truth is there and I have to confront it and make those changes, right? But yeah, even when I check my blood and I log it, it takes time. When you stare at like papers of just numbers, it's a lot to deal with. And it's easy to kind of just say, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? How is someone else doing it? But again, it's just an opportunity to check in with yourself and say, hey, is this working for me? Is it not? And just making those changes.
And I think it's great, Rav, that you recognize that what you're doing right now is working for you. And it sounds like you're already preparing in your mind how you're going to adapt to and think about how to process that data once on a CGM. So that's really great.
Yeah, so obviously with the CGMs, we were kind of talking about a bit about before, it actually gives me a reading, and I think they're all generally the same, every 5 minutes. So obviously there is a ton of data that's going to be collected. I'm not sure about the Libre or the Dexcom sensors, but for me, I definitely have alarm overload right now. I have alarms for before low, alarms on low, alarms trending rapidly too high or too low too quickly. And so it is a lot, but I kind of like keeping in tune with it, especially in the beginning stages. I'm a little bit new still to the pump. And so I think working with all the data myself wasn't manageable. But again, because type 1 diabetes is, when you're a type 1 diabetic, I feel like you're the driver in your car and the healthcare teams are all just there, literally just helping you get along, and it makes it so much easier. So the fact that I have my nursing staff with the Charles Best Center in Whitby, they go over it with me, and it gives me a ton of information that is very useful. I have an auto mode, which is a closed loop kind of system. And so it'll compare my programmed basal rates, the slight adjustments, whether it's giving me more or less than my programmed rates are estimating. So I can change that, and it tracks it throughout the days. It gives as many, I think about 6 months back, you can go and it'll track all the trends, the deviations from itself, kind of the variability periods throughout the day. the active insulin time. It'll manage my corrections. It does the calculations for me. It's a lot to take in all at once, but the benefit of the technology is that now I spend most of my time right in range, and although I do have to silence some alarms and sometimes make some slight adjustments during my day, it doesn't necessarily take the time of my diabetes out of the day, but it does allow me for a little bit better control. And feeling overwhelmed about it is definitely part of the day, but I find that the reward from getting that good outcome, I think, is kind of what keeps me rolling with it.
Sounds like you're doing a really good job balancing the pros and cons and figuring out what works for you. Thanks, Luke.
And I would just like to say, even as healthcare professionals, and we're looking at numbers all the time, it is overwhelming. There is a ton of data, right? And you kind of look at it, and before you just had 4 checks a day, and okay, we adjust that insulin. Now it's it's really quite complicated.
I agree, Lane. Full disclosure, sometimes in our office, family will send in a clarity report for Dexcom, and we will have 2 dietitians and 2 nurses all looking at it thinking, oh my goodness, like what are we going to, suggest? So it can be overwhelming for sure.
And I guess I always feel that there's a story to all those numbers. And when somebody starts to talk about the numbers, suddenly things are just a bit more clear, right?
Yeah.
I'll say to somebody coming into clinic, so what do you notice? Oh, I'm always such and such. And you're like, you are. And it helps a lot to get the insights. It's very valuable. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody. So technology burnout is real. There's tons of data. You can adjust your diabetes as much as you want, as often as you want. So some people can experience diabetes distress when they feel overwhelmed by the reality of their diabetes, which can lead to diabetes burnout. If you see that your blood sugars are trending up, you may want to ignore the situation, but it can make your risk of diabetes complications higher, which can make you feel more anxious or distressed. And this cycle of negative thoughts can start. And so many times in clinic, I'll say to somebody, why don't you check? And they'll say, I just don't want to see the number. If I don't check, I don't see the number, and I don't think about it. And, it's real. It's so real. So I'm just wondering, Luke, maybe talking a little bit about, have you had periods of distress, or how did you cope with just feeling overwhelmed? Is there anything you do to currently avoid diabetes burnout?
In terms of feeling overwhelmed with the technology, I do have to spend a good amount of time every day with it. Every 3 days, I switch the infusion sites or the subcutaneous cannulas that are kind of in there just for the insulin. And then every week, I have to switch my CGM. So it is quite a lot of time putting stickies, poking yourself, and, getting everything bandaged or put on there, stuck on there. But I find most of the concern, or most of the stress that comes with me is managing, I guess, the alarms and kind of making the short-term adjustments. So the periods in between my nurse appointments with the Charles Best Center, when I change my lifestyle a little bit, I find myself stumbling let's say I start an exercise program or some of the sort, or I start eating a little bit differently based on any sort of circumstance. I find those hurdles are always kind of the most distressing. In terms of taking a break from any of the technology, the only time I think I would do that is if my sensor battery, sometimes if I didn't charge it for the proper amount of time at the beginning of the week, it'll die out a day or two before the switch time. And so that's the only time I really take off from the CGM, to be honest. But I find usually getting over the hurdles, always able to contact my diabetes team if I feel like I need any assistance, which is great. I mean, even I guess without COVID, you could do so anyways. But I find usually it's mostly with the lifestyle changes. I find coming over those hurdles a little bit stressful. To get over it, I usually sit down one evening and I say, okay, well, what's happening? Take a deep breath. I can make the adjustments and see if it works. And that usually helps out.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Rav.
Yeah, I've probably experienced burnout a lot because again, I just celebrated like my 23rd year of having diabetes. And I even remember there was a specific point in my life, I was 15, and I was just so exhausted and over it. And like you said, Elaine, I did not want to see the numbers. And so, you know, I was like, I've always been kind of good checking in with myself, like, do I feel low, high, good, whatever that means. And I was like, you know, out of sight, out of mind, which is a terrible mentality to have. And I quickly had to, you know, correct that behavior because whether or not, you know, I want to deal with it, I have to, right? This is my life, this is my livelihood. And with burnout, I think one of the things that has really helped me is talking to people who I feel safe around. So whether that's people who have type 1 themselves or, you know, a certain group of friends. As I've gone older, I've stopped really talking to my parents about it because, you know, when I was diagnosed in 1997, things looked very different. And so the tech is a little bit harder for them to get around. So, you know, I'll just, you know, lean on my sisters. I am someone who does need a lot of reassurance. So I'm very comfortable just opening up and being like, hey, this is how I feel. And, you know, kind of getting that, you know, extra support and understanding is so crucial, especially for me to just kind of feel afloat. And I also take burnout as an opportunity to kind of focus on me and reset and, you know, see, okay, what's not working? What can I do that benefits me here, right? So if I'm feeling like really tired or, you know, isolated because, you know, I've been in my room all day, I'll say, you know what, hey, maybe I'll go out for a drive, grab a coffee, and I'll call a friend. And that's been incredibly helpful to just make me feel like normal, whatever, you know, normal is now, but just helps me feel like Rav, basically.
Perfect. And there's sort of a theme coming out that we need the support of people around us, I think, right? And you learn the people that are helpful and the ones that can give you perspective, and that's very different. Perfect.
Yeah.
Heather.
I guess to go off of what you just said about like needing your people and just like having that sense of community, I think for me, that's been a big support system and a big, I don't want to say like necessarily educational aspect, but like talking to other diabetics, and don't tell my doctor, but just like comparing how bad of a diabetic you've been is kind of reassuring and just like alleviate some of the pressure. So like I remember I went to camp and we talked about like the longest we'd ever been without testing our blood sugar. And I think at that point mine was like 4 days and I was horrified to admit it. And someone's like, oh, I went an entire month without testing my blood sugar and everything was fine. And so just having that reassurance that like nothing is you're doing is that bad and nothing you're doing is perfect. It just is what it is. And diabetes is one of those conditions where if you do everything exactly the same every day, your body will still betray you and say, no, I'm just not going to follow what happened yesterday. It's going to be a hot mess and you're going to feel like garbage for the entire day. And so I think for me, that's what burnout is a lot of the time, where I'm doing everything I feel like I should be doing. I'm following all of the rules, all of the steps. And for whatever reason, my body just betrays me and says like, today you're going to feel like absolute garbage and there's nothing you can really do. Just try and follow the steps anyways. So that's not been great. And I think like everyone said, you kind of take a step back and realize that like all of the information and technology that you have there, information, not judgments, like you are doing everything you should be doing. And the information is there to help inform your decisions, but you're still rocking it.
Perfect, perfect. I know we sort of always say, you know, it's just a number, it doesn't mean anything, but those numbers are loaded, right? And they give you a visceral response sometimes. So I love that you're so grounded and you can just sort of shed that a little bit. That's fantastic. Good for you. Good for you. Kirsten.
I can definitely say I have experienced the burnout. 2 years ago, I went through a very, very rough mental health issue. And I, like some of these panelists here, remember that. And you could see I was tired, I was irritable, my sugars were like through the roof. I was like not eating well, not sleeping well, like a lot was going on. And I remember I was in like huge burnout, but like both Rav and Heather have said, it's that reaching out to your supports, telling yourself that, you know, it's okay. You know, like you just said, Elaine, you know, the numbers are just numbers. We're gonna have days where the number's gonna be one way and then it's gonna change to something else the next way. And, you know, it's just how we deal with it, how we control it. Like you both said, reaching out to support. So I still talk to my family because my family was through it all, especially those times, you know, when I had my pancreas removed and going through all that scenario. My friends, my boyfriend who I live with, like he early on when we started dating took a huge impact and said, you know, what do I need to do for you? How can I help you? What do I need to know about you? So if these situations come up, I can be there to help you. And then again, because mental health and diabetes are sort of combined together, it's how you deal with that to get it down. So journaling, exercise, art, entertainment, music, whatever to help, that also helps you get in the frame of mind to say, okay, what do I need to do for my diabetes?
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. You know, sometimes diabetes is kind of invisible and we expect everybody just to kind of cope. And I love it that you can share and you can let people sort of into your heart a little bit and say those things, because really we all feel it. But I think sometimes diabetes just puts that layer of stress on life that makes it hard, right? And so I really appreciate you sharing. It's so lovely. Thank you.
And really important hearing about each of you and how you use the support networks around you. And hinging on that, I'm just curious. Sometimes taking a break can be helpful, a break from the technology. And it's okay to do this when it's needed. And you just maybe want not to be wearing a device on your body for whatever reason. And if you have a contingency plan or a backup plan and have supplies available, taking a break can be a real stress reliever or a good thing. And not everybody does it. Some people will. And I'm just curious, out of the four of you, if any of you have taken some kind of break from your respective devices, and were there any challenges? Luke, you said sometimes you take a break from your sensor because it isn't charged, so it's somewhat of a forced break and you have to go back to finger pokes. But have you ever done a planned break?
Yeah, so for me, the only reason I would wait, I could change the sensor and charge it. The only reason I wait is because usually Saturday's my most free day that I can kind of sit around or do something, and then I can calibrate everything, make sure everything's all right. But a planned break, I started on a different insulin pump. It would have been, oh boy, 6 years ago now. It was the Accu-Check insulin pump with Roche Diagnostics, which a year later, I think, a year and a half after I started it, they actually recalled it and kind of said, we're not in this business anymore. So because of the way that the funding works in Ontario, for me, I had to wait about 4 years before I could start up on another pump. So I went all the way back to the injections. They were my best friend all over again. But I wouldn't say that necessarily was a planned break, but it was a decision. I could have still used the device, but I kind of felt a little shaky around it still, because I only had it for about a year and I didn't really want to continue it if there wasn't the full outreach of support.
Right.
And so I went back to injections, something I felt comfortable with. My control was generally pretty good. But ultimately, since I've started my new insulin pump, for various reasons in terms of my lifestyle and the pump being a little bit of better suit, kind of on the move and maybe a busy schedule, different exercise plans, stuff like that. Since I've started, I actually haven't taken a significant break. Sometimes if the battery in the pump runs out and I don't have it on me during the day, I actually always have my insulin pen in my backpack, and so I kind of manage around it, and usually I'll try and keep a battery in there because it happened to me one time and didn't want it to happen again. But yeah, so that's about it for me for breaks.
Thanks, Luke. Heather?
So yeah, I've taken both planned and unplanned breaks. My unplanned breaks are mostly when the stars align and I can take naked showers where all of my stickies come off, and it's just that perfect feeling of actually taking a shower with nothing attached to your body. So that is a great joy for me. Or if I ever want to wear fitted dresses and I don't feel like tucking my pump in so it looks like I'm hiding my secret penis kind of thing. And I really enjoy that. So they're like nice short breaks. I have Levemir in the fridge so that I can have a contingency plan for not having my basal going depending on how long it is. Or I know pump settings do allow you to disconnect for, I think it's up to 4-ish hours, so that you bolus a little at the front end to like bring you down a little and then fix at the tail end so that it brings you back down. And so those are always like kind of nice little breaks from the technology where it just like isn't really in tune with whatever it is you want to do, or just like a really nice opportunity to take a short break. I did take a planned break my first year of university where I went from having a pump after, I want to say almost 10 years to MDI. For me, it was not the best transition just because everything that happens with moving to another province, away from your parents, a totally new care team, and then adding to that, totally changing your diabetes regimen was not a perfect system for me. I did enjoy the freedom of not having to be connected all the time. And I think if I had been maybe a little more on top of my care and just like my life in general, because first year is a big mess of like a whole bunch of new experiences, then it might have gone a little bit better. But after about 8 months, I ultimately ended up going back to my pump just because I found that my control was tighter and I had a lot more freedom that way.
That's great. Thank you. And Rav?
So when I was 19, I was living in Ottawa at the time because I did 2 years at the University of Ottawa and then I transferred to Ryerson. And so I was working, I was doing courses in the summer, and then I don't know what really happened. I guess it was a bad batch of like infusion sets. And basically they just kept popping out of my stomach. And I was unaware when I was sleeping. So I woke up, disoriented, sick. I had to call into work. I was like, hey, I can't come in. I got guilted into going into work. And because I'm a team player, I was like, I'll be fine. So I just changed my infusion. I changed it again. Basically ended up like collapsing on a table. And then I had to go to the hospital. So that was in August. And from August till October, I was just constantly paranoid about like, where is my pump? Is it actually in me? Is my pump lying to me? I have trust issues now. So I was like, you know what, just for my own like mental health, I took a break. And I went back to injections for just under 2 years. It was great to have that freedom, great not to get caught on a door handle, even though they make great dramatic exits. But ultimately, like Heather said, my control was way better on the pump. So I went back on it. And you know what? I have to treat my pump as not like I'm a knight in shining armor and it's a dragon. Like I don't have to dominate it. It doesn't have to destroy me. We can coexist, which has been, a pretty tough lesson to learn, but a vital one.
And it's nice that you were able to see both sides of it and that you made the decision to go back on the technology because of the purpose of wanting tighter control. And I think, perspective and looking back, you're able to have that and see where the technology could help you or, and making dramatic room exits sounds kind of Interesting. And I'd love to see one of those.
It's like a really great way to guilt someone if they've like made you upset and you leave the room and you're like, well, now I have to do this. But yeah, so that's my advice out there.
Awesome. I love it. And Kirsten?
So I actually have not thought of taking a break because being on the pump versus what I was before I was on a pump, it's actually night and day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so much better on the pump and on a, I'm actually going to get a Dexcom 6 because of the ability to have the sensors go off when you're going low and have the sensors go off when you're going high, because for somebody like me, that would be a huge advantage, especially with my hypoglycemia unawareness. But yeah, no, I haven't thought of it. And being on this, when I was a teenager, I did have a couple instances where I did have my sugars drop and I had, to get medical support. And, I haven't had that since I've been on the pump, and I've been on the pump since I was 19 and I'm 30 now. So it's kind of, one of those things where it's a part of me. I can't go without it.
And I think that's exactly the answer. For some people, taking a break's not an option. And for other people, being given the permission to take it if they want it is also there. So it's never a one size fits all.
Perfect. So we're wearing the technology, we have lots of data, and we can share it if we want to.
If we want to.
That's right. Depending on the technology you use, it's possible to share your data with other people. This is a very personal decision. You have the power to share your information with whoever you want. Is this something you want to do or feel you have to do? Do you set up boundaries or rules with people you're sharing your data with? It's a very personal decision about very personal information. We're running a little short on time, so I'm going to ask you for a quick answer each. So maybe Heather, could you just about sharing data? Are you comfortable with it? Is it something that's good, helpful, or does it cause you more trouble than?
I'm all for sharing data. I'm very big on boundaries. So I think maybe people know, like, don't mess with me. I gave you this as a privilege, but I can just as easily take it away.
Perfect. Kirsten?
I have to say yes, because, in order to help me and to know what to do if I'm in a situation, everybody around me has to know exactly what's going on.
Perfect. Luke?
No, I don't really share my data with anyone but the team. I don't feel like it would give me any benefit usually, so that's fine.
Okay. And Rav?
Like Luke, I only share it really with my team. It's all about protecting my spirit. If I were to show my parents, we would just get into a fight. They'd be like, well, when you were a kid, in 2000, it was so much easier. And I'm like, stuff has changed. That's it.
Protecting your spirit.
Kind of like opening yourself up a little bit, isn't it?
So I just want to take the opportunity to thank the panelists. As we wrap up tonight's webinar, it's important to note to everyone that you're not alone during this time. For those of you who are watching, we would like to extend the invitation to join Diabetes Hope Foundation's Hope Connects mentorship program, where they match you with a mentor from the DHF family. The mentorship is designed to help support you through this stressful time. Visit DHF's website for more details on how to join the mentorship program.
Next year, the Diabetes Hope Foundation will be developing a supplementary guide to accompany our guide for successful transition to college and universities. This guide is to provide youth in transition with easy, healthy recipes and tips for managing their diet and with diabetes while living on campus. Restrictive dietary needs associated with diabetes, celiac disease, lactose intolerance, gluten-free and vegan requirements, etc., are all featured as well as favorite shopping lists for college, university students, and healthy recipes for studying, snacks, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and dessert. Sounds yummy.
The final cookbook will be reviewed by a diabetes educator and a registered dietitian. This will ensure that the recipes will help students achieve balanced diets to thrive while they are away at school. The cookbook is currently in the early development stages and will be professionally edited for free web download as a supplement to the Guide for Successful Transition to College University. If you know any recipes, blogs, or tips that might be useful for this cookbook, please email them to us at info@diabeteshopefoundation.com. And Rav?
Yes, so thank you, Elaine and Alana, for being our fabulous moderators tonight. We appreciate your professional wisdom and passion for helping youth living with type 1 diabetes. Now, since the beginning of April 2020, DHF has hosted these wellness webinars, which provide support to the T1D community during the COVID pandemic. The purpose of the webinars was to discuss various topics from nutrition to travel to transition during COVID. Our audiences were able to hear the opinions and advice from our senior alumni, and DHF wanted to continue this dialogue with the diabetes community. It is incredibly powerful to hear kids talking to kids. The relatability and respect we have for each other is something that deserves to be celebrated on a platform such as this. Now, since it is our final webinar of the year, I wanted to take this opportunity on behalf of DHF to thank our sponsors, Abbott, Lilly, Medtronic, Novo Nordisk, and Ypsomed. We are very grateful for your support to make these webinars come to life. And a huge shout out goes to Barbara, Anita, Alex, my predecessor, and the rest of the DHF team who have worked so hard to make these webinars happen this year. From the planning, scheduling, marketing, promotion, and beyond, they deserve a huge round of applause. And also thank you to our panelists this year. Now, we have had over 50 speakers that are DHF alumni, parents of T1Ds, professionals working with diabetes themselves, or others who have it. They took the time to research topics, share their valuable input, and share their incredible stories with you. Last but not least, thank you to all of our viewers. We couldn't deliver these wonderful webinars without your continuous support, loyalty, and enthusiasm. Now, please watch this space for more updates about our 2021 webinars. Please be well, stay safe, wear a mask, wash your hands, keep yourself and your loved ones safe. Have a happy holidays and Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.